I have a 6-year-old who is perceptive enough in a 6-year-old mind to know that that is that is taking up an outsourced amount of time.
Yeah. Hey everybody, welcome to Contra Talk, coming to you again from Fight Left Feast here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I am sitting with my former boss. I'm going to get a little personal here. This is Erik Smith. He was my general manager for a while at Verizon cellular sales in Louisville when I sold phones at the latter part of seminary. You're not there anymore, so we can speak freely as much as we can. We'll send this to Joe and RC.
We are in Knoxville, which is the corporate headquarters.
That's true. It is here. That's right. Yeah.
The building is not too far from it.
Is it Dane? Right?
Dane Sissom,
Yeah,
wonderful man.
that's right.
Great visionary,
I
an
don't think I've ever met
entrepreneur
him.
to whose heights we should all aspire.
It is a very good company. Very
great
generous. And anyway, so that's not what we're talking about. Although we are talking about business stuff. Erik is a husband and father. You're in northeastern Georgia now.
Northeast Georgia,
Yeah,
a town called Hartwell.
That's right. Yeah, and you work for a company now called Dime Processing. We'll talk a little bit about that, but also just, I think sometimes people, so I'm pastoring a church now, right? I went to seminary. You went to seminary too.
I did.
And the Lord kind of changed your path. You went more deeper into cellular sales, and now you're with a different company. But that doesn't mean you're less of a Christian, or you're less of a mature Christian, or something like that.
I hope not.
Exactly. But there's still this air, I think, even in serious camps, people who are, I'm serious about my faith, here at the Fight Left Feast. Hey, we want to take things seriously. Christ is King. We want to take, what is all of Christ for all of life. It's the canon press and all that as well. And so people still think, though, being a pastor, a missionary, church planter, you're kind of up here. Everybody else, even if you're this CEO and you're making 6-7 figures, and even if you're a faithful Christian, it's still like, but he's not, she's not, it's not quite the same thing. So talk a little bit about just kind of your experience, as much be as transparent as you want, of being just a faithful husband and father, church member, and maybe even how you moved from going seminary route and thinking you're gonna. You mentioned you still want to plant a church, but you're still working in the business world and doing well at it. And you did well at cellular sales. Just kind of, I don't know. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of transitioned from that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things at work here and at play, and you mentioned several things we'll touch on. So, autobiographically, I felt a call to ministry when I was in high school. Loved the Lord, loved the Bible, sharing my faith is very important to me, and I sensed a call to go to seminary. Slide in, is that good? Yeah. So I sensed this call to go to seminary and prepare for ministry. So I'm doing my bachelor's work at the University of Georgia. Really enjoyed that, but I always had an eye to seminary and ministry. Laser focus. Well, I got married right after college. I'm going to seminary. I knew that it was important I provide for my wife and my family while at seminary. So my wife worked some as well. Nothing wrong with that. For a while there, she actually made more money than I did, even though I worked more hours, but that's another story for another day.
I know how that goes.
I have a good wife who's very talented. And so, anyway, in all of these things, I'm trying to be faithful, trying to prepare for ministry, and after I finished my MDiv, I decided to pursue a PhD. And at the same time, I began working at cellular sales. Now, in the past, I'd worked at UPS, and the career opportunities at UPS just really weren't even there to do anything but be a part-time grunt. So I didn't even pursue anything at all. But as I'm working at cellular sales, I'm finding that the company I work for rewarded excellence. They rewarded diligence, faithfulness, hard work, creativity, and I enjoyed doing those things. Now, meanwhile, I'm at the time working on a PhD at Southern Seminary, and I'm trying to provide for my family while also prepare for ministry. And what I found was that the Lord was blessing my efforts on the sales floor and at work, maybe more so than He was blessing my efforts in the pulpit and in ministry, and as well as and more than in the classroom.
Yeah.
I was also pastoring a church by vocation at the time. So
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah,
as I was thinking through these things, I just began to step back and evaluate. Okay, Lord, where have you gifted me? What am I good at? What am I doing well at? What do I think about when I'm driving down the road?
Yeah.
And my greatest love is theology. But as I really began to examine it, I thought, maybe I'm better. Maybe I'm more suited for the business world, for whether that's management or sales, customer service. I seem to have some gifts there that corresponded to flourishing and benefits I was seeing in my life, tangible benefits to take care of my family. And it didn't seem as real in the seminary and pastoral world, at least for me. Now, that being said, I reached a point where I was a PhD student, and something had to give. To be a faithful husband, to be a faithful father. And I'll tell a brief story of kind of how I broke from that a little bit. It was a Sunday afternoon. My daughter had just turned 6. She wanted to learn to ride her bike without training wheels.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. So I told her, Sunday afternoon, sweetie, 2 o'clock, me and you will get out there in the driveway and we'll learn.
Yeah.
And I had in my mind that I was going to budget that time, and then I had to go back to studying the PhD stuff. I had to go back to it. So she picked it up quick, 15 minutes. She's riding her bike, no training wheels. So exciting.
Nice.
I was like, this is great. And she stopped and she parked her bike beside me. She said, well, Daddy, I know that's all you have time for. It's important that you go study and that you go do your schoolwork and read. So I will let you go back inside now. We'll just put my bike up. And I was like, no, let's keep riding. This is great. And she said, no, Daddy, I know how important it is that you go study. And I was just cut to the quick that I have a 6-year-old who's perceptive enough in a 6-year-old mind to know that is taking up an outsourced amount of time in my life. Anyway, so I decided, where am I being blessed? Where am I gifted? Where am I seeing a return? What does my family appreciate that I do? And my wife appreciate that I do. And honestly, for me, it was a difficult decision, but the rewards for my family were easy to detect.
Yeah.
So, not
That's
everyone's
good,
going to follow that path. Not everyone should follow that path. This is the story kind of what the Lord had for me. But I will say, it doesn't mean that we stop being on mission. And it doesn't mean that we have to somehow, it doesn't make you a second-rate Christian, as you said. We are called by the Lord to be faithful wherever He plants us. So, in my case, fast forward several years now, I mean, I still teach Sunday school.
Yeah.
I still do pulpit supply. I love to preach and teach, and those gifts, those desires are still there, I feel like. But in God's providence, I mean, He's put me in a place where providing for my family looks like being a blessing to others in the business world.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key for why.
Well, it's kind of what a lot of people are doing here. I mean, there's a couple book publishers here. There's some clothing. There's a butcher over here.
That's right.
There's Arcs over here. There's AIG. There's Ref Tunes, cartoon. I talked to him on another episode, and it's not just, oh, I'm preaching the gospel. We hear that, like, well, why do you care about money or this or that or this thing or being excellent? Like you said, just preach the gospel. And it's like, well, that's all folded into preaching the gospel and living the gospel and praying for people and proclaiming the truth. So anyway, not to interrupt, but yeah.
Here's the thing. We tend to separate the sacred and the secular because we love pastors and we value what they do.
Yeah.
And it's not sometimes that we denigrate the business world so much as we want to elevate and honor and respect pastors, which is good.
Yeah.
We should do that. We should respect them and obey them, and we should hold them to a very high standard and be appreciative of them. But for me, kind of a paradigm shift was thinking back to Abraham. So Abraham was called by God. Now that's a unique situation, let's grant that.
Right.
But he was called by God to go out to a new land. God promised to make of him a great nation, and He told him that you will be a blessing to the nations. Now we know that finds its fulfillment in Christ the Messiah. But in his lifetime, Abraham was a blessing to the people around him. And when we think about the good he did for the nations there, even in Canaan, the good that he did for his nephew Lot, he did good for people. Now, how did he do it? Was he a blessing to the nations by preaching to them? By starting a church or a synagogue or any of those things? Well, maybe, we don't know. But what we do know is he had livestock. He had an abundance of resources that he used to be a blessing to the people around him through commerce and economics and those things. So as a Christian, we're all called to be a blessing to those around us. And, you know, when you have a bakery and you make great cakes that are excellent for children in your community who have birthdays, you are blessing your community. And beauty and goodness are persuasive. Beauty and goodness, excellence, those things are in a way more winsome than trying to go out of your way to be winsome.
No, that's very true. That's good. I mean, and I think sometimes we think the blessing thing is sometimes it's separate, or we still, you know, the sacred and the secular. And I mean, there is a distinction. Sure, it's not, you know, Christians, we're not doing church right now. We're not in a church service. I wouldn't even say conferences like this are a church service necessarily, because we're not regularly body people gathered together in this place where we live and worshiping the Lord together. There's worship going on, there's teaching and preaching going on, but it's not necessarily church and the gathered body of believers. But, you know, I think we often just bifurcate and divide up stuff unnecessarily. And like you're saying, we don't need to do that. You know, you're still a Christian, you're still, how are you going to bless your family? How are you going to bless other people? How are you just going to be excellent, be good? That's one thing that I appreciated, even going to seminary, and really having this high level of, hey, we dress a certain way, we do a certain thing. This is the way the bookstore looks, this is the way the cafeteria looks, and you get the buildings, and you know, they spend money and time on that, but it pays off as opposed to just, you know, drywall and drop ceilings and just, you know, portable buildings and just junk and people showing up in t-shirts and jeans, at least professors, right? And so I learned that, I think, more than I would have just going to seminary and being part of that ecosphere. So
that's right. That's right. And I will say this, getting back to a little bit on the business world, even being a blessing in business. So if you find yourself working at Target or Walmart in retail, or like us selling phones, you know, when we had a customer come in who needed their pictures transferred from their old phone to their new one, you're blessing that person by being good at it, by being efficient, having a great attitude, being able to do it quickly. It brings honor and glory to the Lord. And it also, your coworkers notice, right? I mean, we knew the guys that we wanted to work with, and the guys that
we did.
Yeah, I see that shift with.
Oh, I know exactly.
I see the shift with Bobby, and I don't want to go
I
there.
hope he switches. I hope he doesn't show up. Or whatever. So no, that's good. And I mean, and there's plenty of opportunities to live out being a Christian. It's not just preach the gospel. Like, we do hear that. You know, well, why don't you just preach the gospel? Why do you care about this thing or that thing? You know, why do you care about even aesthetics on a building, or, you know, wearing a particular thing, or having a particular Bible, or anything? I mean, maybe not so many people that listen to this podcast, but it's out there, and we still know those. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's more traditional side, or just kind of this very functional. Well, the pastor's the top; he's doing the work. Everybody else, we're just here. Where it's kind of spectator sport, and I often will say from the pulpit, Christianity's not a spectator sport. You know, we're not here along for the ride. We're here to do our part. I mean, let's not forget Paul's admonition of some of the hands, some of the eyes, some of the mouth, some of the ears, some of the feet. If everybody's an eye, where's the hearing going to come from, right? And so I think having a blessing and being a blessing to then the congregation as well, and to your pastor, working well, changing diapers, that's a blessing for other people, even if you might not think of it. You're a stay-at-home mom, right? Or you're just supporting your husband, and husbands loving their wives, and unifying. I mean, in the smallest government, which is the family, you know, the smallest. Those are good, but those outwork, and many people have said it better than me, that all these things are connected so well that they build a better society, and they build better churches, and they build better, and it's just nicer to live. It's more, and we're reaping the benefits of that still, despite the fact that culture, the enemy in particular, is trying to shred it in every possible way.
And I want to say this too, you know, when there are Christians in business who are trying to build an enterprise that honors the Lord, that is a blessing to the community, that is a blessing to their employees, I think we as Christians have a duty Maybe not absolute in every case, but I think we have a duty to support those businesses
Yeah,
with our dollars.
I think so too.
You know, you as a Christian, I'm not saying it's a sin to shop at Walmart, but if you know that you can support the local mom and pop shop, maybe it costs a couple dollars more, but that's going to employ Christians, that's going to reinvest money into their church, or maybe the church you go to,
Their family.
that dollar has the power to do a whole lot more by spending it at the mom and pop shop than it does if you spend it at Walmart. It goes back to Bentonville, Arkansas, and then over to China, or who knows where that dollar goes. So I think as Christians, we think about business in terms of me as an employee or maybe me as a boss at a place and honoring the Lord that way. I think we also have to think about it as consumers, as customers. We want to have an impact in our world on both sides of the dollar, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Why don't you briefly just mention your current company now?
Yeah, okay, so I work for Dime Payments. So let me tell you a little bit about Dime. Dime does several things. We want to support businesses, churches, and nonprofits with payment processing, online donations, bookkeeping and accounting. Basically, if you need to take money from clients or donors, or if you need somebody to count that money, make sure it's going where it's supposed to go, and that every dollar is tracked correctly, we've got a solution for you.
Yeah.
We're a Christian company. Now, we work with anyone.
Yeah.
You know, we're not exclusive in who we'll work with, but we have a particular heart for churches and nonprofit organizations, and Christian businesses, to be excellent at serving them in the things that distract them from what they want to do.
Doing their mission, executing that.
That's right. So if you're a pastor, you don't go to seminary, spend all this time training, and go become a pastor so that you can stare at financial reports all day. That's not what it means to be a pastor. You want to preach, you want to teach. You should outsource that. You should hire an expert to do that. We're the experts on it. We'll take care of that for you. Or if you're starting a business, and you mentioned a butcher shop over there that we spoke with. You want to be the best butcher you can be. You don't need to be staying up till 3 a.m. trying to learn all the different payment processing systems, what's going to work, what is interchange plus pricing. You don't need to know that. Find an expert that will take care of you that you can trust, and that's where we come in.
Okay. What's the website for Dime if anybody's interested?
Yeah, so you can go to dimepayments.com or dimeaccounting.com. So dimepayments.com, dimeaccounting.com. We'd love to take care of you, find out what you need, and provide the right solution.
Yeah. Well, is there like a referral system that says like Erik Smith sent you?
No, if you go there, we have a tell us about yourself button where you can learn more. That will go to me. Okay,
there you go. Perfect. Well, do you have any last thing you want to say about business and just being an excellent Christian in not a missionary pastor role, whether it's a mom at home or a guy slugging through 60 hours a week at Ford or some grocery store or working third shift?
Yeah, I'll say we have an environment today where it is very difficult for a Christian with a regular 9-to-5 job, or for a corporate company or retail or whatever, to feel fulfillment in what they're doing.
Yeah.
It can be very difficult to sell phones to people who are coming in and feeling like, where does this fit into the world?
Yeah, I had a lot of conversations with other believers like that, like, why are we doing this?
What am I doing in my life?
Yeah.
There's also, I think retail maybe particularly, you might feel it acutely that you're contributing to materialism and that.
Yeah.
But even if you're working at UPS, which I did for several years, you're loading those packages, you're repairing things, whatever you do there. If you're a mechanic and you're fixing cars, there can be this tension to feel like, what am I doing? I'm giving my time in exchange for $1, and is this really meaningful in the world? And it's very easy to give into the cynicism, or to be a nihilist. None of this matters. None of this is important. But God created a physical world. We are not ethereal spirits. This is a physical world that exists. And we glorify God when we learn a craft, when we learn a trade, like fixing a car or building something with your hands, writing a book.
Yeah.
We glorify God in that way. Now, it can feel difficult to say, all I do is turn wrenches or press keys on a keyboard, And I do think there are sometimes, if you as a Christian, you're sitting in your cubicle under fluorescent lights and you're pecking out numbers on a spreadsheet all day, maybe you do need to go do something else.
Yeah, sure. And there, I mean, of course, the Lord uses that, pushes certain things with it. I mean, I had conversations when I was doing graphic design, working full time doing that, and felt kind of like you said, this call to ministry. And I moved 2,000 miles eastward to Kentucky, and here I am now talking to you. But but there was this level of discontentment. So just because, I guess if you want, I sought counsel. I think we should at least, pastoral counsel, other friends. Hey, I'm doing this. I know this is good. I'm still involved in my church, or I'm sharing the gospel when I can. When I'm trying to love my family. I'm trying to do this and that, serve and so on. But sometimes it's kind of like, I just don't like this. Would you just not like it because is the Lord using that to say, hey, I want you over here? Or is it something different that you just need to get over and just do your job?
Have you ever seen The Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to use a goofy Lord of the Rings expression or analogy here. So if you find yourself doing a task that you really don't necessarily enjoy, and you're not the hero of the story at your company, on one hand, sometimes you just got to stop and say, you know what? I'm not Aragorn.
Yeah.
I'm not even Frodo. My role in this story, my role in this company is to be Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah.
And you know what? You need Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah.
And you need to be fulfilled that way. But then there are sometimes, I felt this way when I worked at Walmart in a long time ago, where I looked around and I was like, I'm not Sam Gamgee, I'm not Merry, I'm not Pippin, I'm not even a Hobbit. I'm employed by Saruman, and I'm an orc down here in the building Orcai here. I need to get out of here.
Attacking Helm's Deep.
That's right. There are times where you are
rocks thrown at you and flaming arrows.
Yeah. So you want to be Sam.
Yeah.
We'd all love to be Aragorn.
Yeah.
Don't be an orc. Get out of there if you can.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Well, I appreciate the time, Eric.
Yeah,
Thanks
man.
so much. Everybody, go check out if you need payment systems. Payroll for your church. Maybe tell your pastor about it if they're slugging through. Your treasurers just quit. Who knows? I mean, there's all sorts of things. Ministry, no pastor wants to deal with stuff like this. So talk to Eric and Don, and big company, right? And they've got a lot of good stuff. So appreciate it. Y'all take care, all right? See you.